Hey everyone, today we're going to run a full system upgrade on the most important piece of tech you will ever own, your brain. Look, in this age of just constant information overload, it's so easy to feel like our mental processors are glitching out all the time. So let's figure out how to strengthen our minds to not just survive, but actually thrive in it.
Does this sound familiar to you? You spend hours reading books, listening to podcasts, watching incredible videos, but then when you actually need to remember that one key piece of information, it's just poof, gone. It is a super common frustration. And you know what? It points to a fundamental mismatch between how our brains are wired and the world we're living in right now.
And this quote from productivity expert David Allen, it just hits the nail on the head. This is the core of the problem. We treat our minds like these biological hard drives, just trying to cram them full of data. But that's not what they're for. Their real power, their genius, lies in processing information, connecting dots, and creating new things. So how do we fix this? Well, here's the game plan.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this system upgrade. First, we're going to diagnose our brain's big problem. Then, we'll get into upgrading our biological hardware, our wetware. After that, we'll install some really powerful learning algorithms. Next up, we'll build an external drive to handle all the storage. And finally, we'll see how this whole thing comes together to turn knowledge into real, tangible creation.
So, let's get into it. What is our brain's big problem? Well, you can think of it as the information overload glitch. Our brains, brilliant as they are, simply were not designed for the constant 24/7 fire hose of data we face every single day. And that leads to stress, mental clutter, and that really frustrating feeling that we're forgetting everything.
I mean, think about it. We feel this constant pressure to be learning, to be improving. We invest so much time and energy consuming content, but without a system in place to actually capture and use it, all that precious knowledge just gets scattered, or worse, it just fades away. We're putting in the work, but we're not getting the reward.
All right, so let's start with our first big step. Before you can install any new software, you have to make sure the hardware is running smoothly. And in this case, that hardware is our biological brain, our wetware. We got to optimize it.
Now, this entire upgrade is possible because of one incredible, almost magical concept, neuroplasticity. You know, scientists used to think the adult brain was basically fixed, set in stone. But now we know that's totally wrong. It can literally change and adapt based on our experiences and habits. This right here is the fundamental key that lets us strengthen our minds.
So, how do we boost our brain hardware? Well, it really comes down to three simple but incredibly powerful pillars. First up, quality sleep. This is when your brain gets to work consolidating memories, moving them into long-term storage. Next, a healthy diet. For example, compounds like curcumin, which you find in turmeric, are powerful antioxidants that help protect our brain cells from damage. And finally, aerobic exercise. Running, cycling, anything that gets your heart bumping. It's like fertilizer for your brain. It boosts this key protein called BDNF, which actively encourages the growth of brand new neurons. How cool is that?
Okay, our hardware is tuned up and running great. Now it's time to install some high-performance software. These are the learning techniques, backed by science, that work with our brain's natural processes to make information actually stick around.
The absolute key here is to understand the difference between just passively reviewing something and actively recalling it. Passive review, rereading text, highlighting passages, just watching a video, it feels productive. But honestly, it's incredibly inefficient. The real magic, the heavy lifting, happens with active recall. That means forcing your brain to pull information out of storage, like quizzing yourself or trying to explain a concept from memory. That act of retrieval is what forges strong neural pathways.
And a super powerful algorithm to pair with active recall is spaced repetition. See, our brain has this natural tendency to forget things over time. It's called the forgetting curve. Spaced repetition is how you fight back. You review information at increasingly longer intervals. Each time you successfully recall it, you can wait a little longer before the next review, which basically locks that knowledge deeper and deeper into your long-term memory.
Another fantastic piece of mental software is the Feynman Technique. It's a really simple, four-step process for making sure you truly understand something. The core idea is to pretend you're teaching a concept to a child. You have to use simple words, simple analogies. This process immediately shows you where the holes in your own understanding are, forcing you to go back to the material and really master it.
And then there's this seriously cool and ancient technique, the method of loci, also known as a memory palace. The idea is you mentally place bits of information you want to remember along a route that's super familiar to you, like a walk through your own house. To recall it, you just mentally retrace your steps and pick up the information you left at each spot. It sounds crazy,
but it works.
So, we've upgraded our internal hardware, we've installed some killer software. Now it's time for the final game-changing piece of the system, building an external drive. This is where we offload the job of storing information, which frees up our biological brain to do what it does best: think, dream, and create.
This external drive is what Tiago Forte famously calls a second brain. It's basically a single, centralized digital home for all the ideas, inspirations, and insights that you learn and that resonate with you. Think of it like your own personal, searchable knowledge base that acts as a true extension of your mind. And building one is actually a pretty simple 4-step process called code. First, you capture any ideas and insights you find interesting. Second, you organize them for action, usually by project. Third, you distill them down to their core essential message. And finally, and this is the most important step, you express them. You use them to create something new.
So why bother doing all this? Well, the benefits are huge. You dramatically reduce that feeling of mental clutter and stress. You can find anything you've ever thought was important in just a few seconds. But the biggest thing? It helps you turn all that passive knowledge you're consuming into active, creative output. And it frees up your actual brain to imagine, to wonder, and to have those amazing aha moments.
And this brings us to the ultimate purpose of this whole system upgrade. Because this isn't just about learning more stuff more effectively. It's about putting that learning into action. It's about actually running the new program that you've just installed.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? Truly owning your knowledge doesn't come from just memorizing facts. It comes from applying them. When you can take what you've learned, process it through your own unique perspective, and use it to create something, a blog post, an essay, a project at work, anything, that's when it truly becomes a part of you.
So in the end, the goal isn't to become a digital hoarder or some kind of librarian of random facts. It's about building an integrated system that lets you consistently turn the information you consume into real-world results and creative expression. By optimizing our hardware, installing effective learning software, and building that powerful external drive, we've created a whole new system for thinking and creating. So I'll leave you with this final thought. With this new mental operating system fully installed, what will you create?